Hello, hello, my lovelies. Today we're going to be talking about the live action Monster High and everything that I thought about it. I have a couple mixed feelings about this movie in particular, so we're going to talk about it without any further ado. Grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's jump into it. Roll the intro. Welcome back. Now I'm going to go into the plot, then the characters, then my overall thoughts about this movie. So, starting off with the plot, and I'm going to tell you basically the rundown. I'm going to try to make this as unspoilerly as possible in the first half, and then I'm going to talk about, with spoilers, towards the end of the video. So starting with the plot of this movie is that Claudine Wolfe is a half-human, and that she gets invited to Monster High. But the thing is that Claudine is half human, and humans in this version of Monster High are the enemy. Humans cannot be at school. There's even been a case where a half human, which is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, were at the school and they got kicked out because they were half human. So Claudine goes into the school trying to hide her human side and trying to show that she has what is a true monster heart, which is needed in order to attend Monster High. Along the way, she meets Frankie Stein, Cleo Denial, Laguna Blue. She meets all the familiar faces from the original series, but they're all in a different light. It's been known that Draculaura is practicing witchcraft in this version. Frankie goes by they, them pronouns, which personally, I don't mind. I don't care. I mean, it kind of makes sense because Frankie has a lot of different parts and they really do specify that. I mean, you know that Frankie, they are a bunch of different parts. So I really don't care. That's something that's been controversial. I think it was fine. I don't personally see an issue with Frankie being they, them, so yeah. So now we're going to go into the characters themselves, and quite frankly, I didn't mind most of the characters. Claudine having this turn of being a half-human, half-werewolf didn't quite bother me, but the fact that her mom is dead kind of did. In the original series, Claudine's mom is alive, where we don't really see her dad, we see her mom. And so the turn of her mom being the one that's gone and her dad being alive, I mean, I didn't mind it, but I really did like her mom as a character in the previous series, so maybe that's just me. I didn't really mind Claudine as a character in this one. I thought the actress did a good enough job. I feel like, I really hope though that like in the animated series or when they make another movie that Claudine is her usual confident, sassy self, because that is something I kind of missed. But we did kind of see it towards the end, and now I'm going to leave kind of a spoiler warning right here, because to go further into the characters and their journeys in this movie, I'm going to have to spoil a couple things. So if you don't want spoilers, click out of the video right now, go watch the movie, then maybe come back, because it's kind of hard to talk about specifically a few characters without spoiling plot, so just letting you know now. When it comes to Draculaura, I really did like the turn of Draculaura being a witch, and that, but I really didn't like that they made her really standoffish. They made Draculaura like this kind of edgy loner girl. And while I do like, you know, her having more of a confidence, more of, you know, that kind of thing, where in the original series, Draculaura was very insecure about herself in a lot of moments. She really cared what people thought, but I kind of missed her usual bubbly self, where we've seen a lot of that in Frankie in this movie. I just kind of wish that, like, she had confidence, but she would have been her usual bubbly self. I know a lot of people were complaining that, like, she didn't have an accent, that Draculaura didn't have an accent. And I didn't care because the actress themselves said that they couldn't do a Transylvanian accent. They asked her to, but she couldn't really pull it off and it sounded terrible. So that's why they went with the direction of using her normal voice, because she couldn't pull off the Transylvanian accent. So I understand why. Because if you're really going to be in a movie like this, you know, people in the doll community or the Monster High community in general are going to be tearing people apart. And they did. They're still tearing this movie apart. And I just wish Draculaura would have been her more usual bubbly self, because I just like Draculaura that way. I don't know why, but I didn't mind her in this movie. Now we're going to move on to Frankie Stein, who is another one of my personal favorites. And in this movie, I liked Frankie. I honestly did not mind Frankie in this movie. I actually really liked Frankie. They were really cute. They were really their usual self, like not knowing how to high five. And I know that's kind of something that people have ragged on with Frankie, is like they don't know how to high five, so they do this whenever someone's like, high five, and then Frankie's like, I mean, that's Frankie though, because Frankie even says in the movie that they are only 15 days old. Like, they ain't gonna know everything. And the fact that, like, Frankie has these, like, genius brain parts, and that helps a lot through the movie, I actually really like that turn with Frankie. I thought that was a really good thing that they did with them. I did not mind Frankie at all. I don't really have that much more to say about Frankie, besides I really liked the person that they got to play Frankie. I think they did an alright job playing Frankie. Totally pulled it off to me. Now we're going to move on to Deuce Gorgon, and this is another thing that a lot of people really weren't sure about is Deuce, is because a lot of people didn't like the way Deuce looks. A lot of people didn't like the relationship that he has with Claudine. The fact that Cleo and Deuce are broken up in this movie, and that he kind of moves on. But one thing about Deuce's whole backstory that we didn't really get any context for is that, like, he did something really bad last year at Monster High while he was dating Cleo, and that, like, one of the reasons why he broke up with Cleo is because he wasn't his true monster self, and that he was doing some bad things, but we never learn what that was. We never learn what that was with Deuce. He constantly is, like, dropping it, you know, that he did some bad things when he's talking to Claudine. He doesn't really go into further detail, but he's doing his best to change this year, and that he's just doing his best to, like, move on from Cleo and all this other stuff that he did, but we never learn what that is. And that really did confuse me, because, like, what did you do, Deuce? What did you do? What did you do? Now, as for their relationship, and I know that's kind of a thing that people are going to be talking about, considering the fact that it's heavily implied that Claudine is, you know, part of the LGBTQ community, and that she is more leaning towards women. But I actually kind of didn't mind their relationship in this movie, and I know that might be a hot take, but I actually didn't mind Claudine and Deuce's relationship because it was kind of cute. It was kind of cute, but I'm kind of on the fence. I thought it was cute. I thought it was, you know, normal. It wasn't anything like I'm gonna cry kind of vibes, even when he got turned to stone towards the end. So I didn't really mind Deuce. I thought he was fine. I just kind of wish I knew what he did last year. You know what I mean? So that's what I gotta say about Deuce. I thought his outfit was cute. I thought the actor played Deuce quite well. I didn't mind him. Moving on. Now we're gonna move on to Heath, and not that much to say about Heath. He was hardly in the movie, even though he's on one of the posters. I don't understand why they included him on the posters when the guy barely had anything in this movie to do. He hardly had anything to say. He was just basically a background character. So not that much to say about Heath. But now we're going to move on to Laguna, and kind of the same thing with Laguna. They featured Laguna on all of this stuff, and it really did cause a whole controversy about how Laguna isn't blue. They changed her look. Why'd they do this? But in the movie, Laguna doesn't really have that many lines. We kind of just see her next to Cleo. We just see her next to Cleo and all this other stuff. But she's always kind of in the background, so why did they even make a poster for Laguna when she wasn't even heavily in the movie? It mainly focuses on Claudine, Frankie, Draculaura, Cleo, and Deuce. That's where this movie is heavily focused on, but we don't really see that much of Heath or Laguna, where, surprisingly enough, Ghoulia Yelps was more in this movie, and she didn't even get a poster. And I really liked Ghoulia. Ghoulia, I know, wasn't able to talk in the last versions of Monster High, but I liked Ghoulia. Ghoulia has always been one of my girlies. I love Ghoulia. She is one of the characters that I've always loved because of her look. I've always loved Ghoulia so much. I've always wanted the Deadfast Ghoulia, but it's super expensive. I like her because she collects comic books. She's a super, fangirl of comic books, and me being one myself. Yeah, it makes sense. I love Ghoulia. And I actually liked Ghoulia in this movie. I did not mind Ghoulia at all in this movie, so yeah. Now I'm going to talk about Professor Kronos. And I did not understand this guy's character at all. I did not understand Mr. Kronos at all. He's a new character, and this is kind of one of the reasons why I made this part spoilers, because to further explain Professor Kronos, I'm gonna have to talk about spoilers, because this guy is important to the movie, and it's gonna have to be spoilers too, So, when it comes to Professor Kronos is a new character. He is the son of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And the professor's whole thing is that he is the son of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, therefore he is also half human, and the school starts trying to, put messages on the wall to expel the enemy, get rid of the enemy. So a major plot point of this movie is that Professor Kronos is leading Claudine and the trio to find this vial that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde had left behind when they were at the school before they were kicked out. They had a secret lab, but he doesn't tell them that he's related until the very end. And this is one issue I did have with the movie, is the fact that, the whole Mr. Kronos being the villain really did not happen until the very end. And even then, the setup for him being the villain, taking the vial from Claudine, drinking it, becoming this, mega monster kind of thing was good. But the way that they solved the problem so fast, he takes the power from Deuce, he takes the essence from Draculaura, takes her vampire essence, takes Deuce's Gorgon powers from him, and then Cleo hands Claudine the phone, hands her a phone, and is like, say cheese, and then Mr. Kronos turns to stone. When it's so built up that he's this, really big villain, that he's this huge, big problem, and he's finally released and everything. And why didn't we see more of that? Why didn't we see more of, the danger, the fight of fighting Mr. Kronos? And that would have given Claudine a much better, way to defeat him and give it more of an impact, was for the battle to rage on a little bit more. I understand they had a time constraint and everything, but why set up this villain through the whole movie, set up this plot twist, make him this, seemingly really bad villain that needs to be beat by all the kids of the school, when all it takes is 2 minutes for him to get Deuce's power and for him to try to turn Claudine to stone, and she's just say cheese with a phone. it was just very anticlimactic to me. I feel like the setup and everything was good. Like, it actually made it feel like the ghouls were in danger. They were locked in the lab with this guy who is trying to destroy the school and everything. Setting that all up, and then just having the battle happen outside of the lab, and then the adults come later. I would have liked it to be like he turns all the teachers to stone, or Headmistress Bloodgood, Dracula, turn all the council members, because another plot point is that there's all these council members there for an alumni meeting, and that includes Dracula, Headmistress Bloodgood, Claudine is supposed to be speaking at it because her mom was a really big prestigious member of the school before she passed, and there's all these legendary monsters there, and that's a big part of the whole movie, is that Claudine is trying to get this vial to turn her human half monster so she's able to speak at this big event. So why didn't they have Kronos, turn a bunch of kids to stone and then go up to the actual school, get the teachers, and then Claudine use the phone to turn Mr. Kronos to stone, therefore saving the school, saving everyone. And that would have made the whole end of the movie a lot better, because at the end of the movie, even though she's still half human, they allow Claudine to stay at the school, and Dracula has this whole change in him that he's like, you know what, maybe all humans ain't that bad. But it happens suddenly with the way that the movie is as is, and it just doesn't seem earned. It doesn't seem earned to me. I don't know why. So yeah, that didn't feel earned to me. And now I'm going to talk about the music in this movie. I didn't really care. The songs are fine. I think the best song, is the one that Claudine is singing through the whole movie, is like, here I am, I'm coming out of the dark. I'm not even trying to sing that. But I think that one was the best song overall. And then there's a couple other songs in it that I didn't really care for. I thought they were fine. They're fine. I would have liked it at the end when they're getting ready to do the closing. I would have liked if they would have done their own rendition of the Monster High Fright song. The "We are monsters, we are proud." I would have liked that if they would have done that at the end. It would have been a cute little throwback, and it would have just tied everything at the end together to me. I would have liked it, okay? I know a lot of people probably wouldn't have liked it, but I would have, okay? Now I'm going to go into my last thoughts about this movie. Plot. I liked the plot. I'm going to give the plot maybe a 6. I liked the plot. For the characters, the characters were alright. 6. And then the whole movie overall, I believe, is a 7 or a 6. I didn't really mind the movie. I wish they would have changed a couple things I already mentioned before. There's a couple things that didn't make sense or would have been better if they would have dragged it out a little bit more. Like Kronos' whole, villain rampage. I would have liked it if they would have extended that a little bit more, because Monster High ain't afraid to do that. In Freaky Fusion, Frankie ends up getting, basically almost killed. Frankie ends up getting killed, and then they have to save Frankie and put her in this charging chamber and stuff, and there's a couple fight scenes and chases. They're not afraid to drag out the villain fight in Monster High, so I would have liked it if they would have done that with this one. The same thing with Deuce mentioning that he did a couple bad things the last year. What did you do? What did you do, Deuce? But they never explain it. And now it's going to drive me nuts. What did he do? So, and also, what is the whole deal with vampires and witches having a war for centuries? And that's why Dracula doesn't like witches. And hears that there is some witchcraft going on at the school. Turns out it's his own daughter. But I would have liked it if they would have, explored a couple things more. So that's why I'm giving this movie a 7 on the board. It was cute. It was all right. Wasn't fantastic. It wasn't terrible to me. I think it was just kind of average and fine. So that's my thoughts about it. They set it up to be a sequel. There's going to be a sequel with Draculaura being the main character of the next one, it looks like, because at the end we see someone looking through a crystal ball and they're looking at Draculaura and the trio at the end, and Draculaura... So sorry if you heard my dog barking, but Draculaura is like having the girls float a little bit, and they're like holding hands, and then we see it pans out to a crystal ball, and there's this woman that we don't see, and she's like, that's the one. She's the one that's going to help us destroy the vampires forever. And then it just kind of pans out into the credits. So I think there's going to be a sequel where we focus more on the war between vampires and witches and what that's all about and how this has to deal with Draculaura. So hopefully we get more of that context. I would have liked it. I hope with the next movie they give us a little bit more background on what Deuce did that year, because I'm going to be a little bit curious as to what he did. So yeah, that's my thoughts about the Monster High movie. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. If you feel like it, please hit the likes and the subscribe buttons. I don't just talk about movies, I also talk about books, TV shows, anime, pop culture news, pop culture drama, anything that I find interesting, it goes on the channel. That's why the name's The Random Show. It's random for a reason. And there's a lot of Halloween content going on right now, so be on the lookout for that. So, I love you all so much, and I hope you have the best day. Bye.